there at Independent Institute?
I am. I'm in Oakland this week, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I interned there in summer of 2008, and I
Oh
remember
yeah,
one little curious fact about that place, or at least, I think it was a fact, that MC Hammer recorded his 1990 album in that building,
that is indeed
or
true.
89.
it's,
Please, Hammer,
it's
don't ever listen.
a historic spot. it's,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it's over there by the airport, nothing too fancy. It's kind of
yeah,
cool. That's the little classical liberal outpost in that little corner of the very
indeed.
blue state and a very blue part of the state.
A very blue part of the state. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I was just, just this isn't live or anything, by the way. It's just
Okay. Yeah. No
just want to
worries.
have
Yeah.
kind of a casual conversation about mainly the kind of kerfuffle you've been engaged in recently with people disputing the strong presence of Marxism in the academy.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
I guess because not at this late date, not as many self-identify as such. In my opinion, mainly because it's so taken for granted that they don't need to, and that
Right. Right.
what has happened is that Marxism has given birth to kind of um, a litany of other theories, spin-offs, if you will, if you want to liken it to like a series or something on television. Post-colonialism and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Exactly.
critical
All the
legal
critical
theory.
theory.
Yeah, so they, you don't. It's like asking why, someone who refers to themselves as a Lutheran or something doesn't keep
Yeah.
saying I'm for Jesus Christ or, you know, I'm a Christian first and foremost. Maybe they just say I'm a Lutheran, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
specific enough that they need not, take you way back to the beginning or anything. So yeah, um, you did have you kind of turned this recent very online um, debate into like a paper, or is it just sort of an ongoing scattershot sort of thing?
It's a little bit of both. So, keeping the online portion of it active, but I have a couple of articles on specific instances of academic skew toward the left intensifying in recent years. One of them's in the Independent Review from a few years ago, and then I've got some shorter op-eds and pieces like that that I put out more recently. And some in the works right now.
Yeah, I did a little Gemini deep research on Marxism in the academy, and curiously enough, uh, you're more likely to find self-described Marxists at the fanciest, most elite schools,
Hmm.
not um, the institutions that are at least closer to being able to claim that they represent the working class,
Right,
i.e.
right.
community colleges and such, right?
Yeah,
You,
yeah,
you,
yeah. It's all an Ivy League type of a thing. It's
yeah, it should not that should not be the case theoretically.
no.
Yeah. So of these kind of interlocutors that you've been dealing with, um, what is the composition of their claims that Marxism is not actually that prevalent?
Yeah, I think the core of it comes down to is they try to intentionally identify Marxism in a very, very narrow sense, a very doctrinaire version of Marxism that says you must be like actively instigating a revolutionary proletarian socialist movement and do so strictly in class and economic terms. And if you aren't engaged in that, if you aren't basically replicating Leninism, then it doesn't count as real Marxism.
Yeah.
And there's like a bait and switch operation that's going on here. Well, they'll use that definition, and then they'll turn around and two sentences later and say, "Well, yes, but I also think Karl Marx was the most important social theorist of the last 200 years. His ideas really cut into the problems of our age, and that his prescriptions are all correct." And like they'll agree with 99% of everything Marx ever said, but they'll say, "But because I'm not out there fomenting a proletarian revolution, I don't count as a Marxist."
Yeah. There's they really seem to discount rhetoric. So by that I mean, you could be saying the most Marxist things ever, but if you're doing so from within the private sector or from within an HR department in a corporation,
Oh
then
yeah,
it
yeah.
can't possibly be Marxist. So in
Can't be
a way,
Marxist,
it's sort
right?
of
Right.
it's
They,
sort of
they define it a
unfalsifiable,
way.
right? Yeah.
It's yeah, like 90% of it's just word games, and
Yeah. Um, I looked into as well the presence of Marxists in the nonprofit sector, and
Yeah, yeah,
you know, that was interesting because they don't have I guess because people aren't as curious to take surveys of nonprofit sector workers to see what they think
right. Right. There's
nearly as
very
much
little
as
data out
academia.
there. We only have a glimpse with some of it in academia because a couple of surveys have been run, but not more broadly.
Yeah, given what most nonprofits are tasked with doing, given their their mission statements, it's it's quite easy to believe that there's a lot of them there too. Um, I remember having a call with a woman at PayPal. She
Hmm.
was actually on a call with me from a PayPal office in Dublin, Ireland, and she was saying, that America discounted Marx far too much, and I don't even know how we stumbled onto that kind of conversation.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just funny that not only is it private sector, it's a finance oriented company,
right,
it's like
right.
capital with a capital C. Um, so yeah, it's sort of become both, Marxism is sort of the ultimate rhetorical kind of opposition to the status quo, and yet it finds itself pretty welcome as far as being able to express its views. And so, yeah, you see the left fall back a lot on, yeah, we're allowed to talk about all this stuff. We're allowed to talk a good game, but the structure of capitalism won't let us actually do anything about it.
Right.
Hence, Marxism is not really any kind of force that you should be
Yeah,
concerned with.
yeah,
Whereas, if you're on the right, not only do you not see that your idea is winning rhetorically, to broach them at all is can be fatal to your reputation.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It gets more of a target painted on you for that than for being an outright socialist.
Yeah, so the problem on the right is not only do we not see our ideas, coming to fruition, but to talk about them is dangerous enough. Whereas the left says, well, no, you may not be able to talk about things, but it's all really going your way implicitly, just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
of the structure or something, right?
yeah,
As long as there is a profit-driven system, and there is private sector, or private sector is ubiquitous, generally running the show, at least relative to real existing socialism, then you're actually getting everything you want,
yeah.
despite your having to walk on eggshells rhetorically.
Right, right. That's exactly.
Yeah. Apart from that Marxism debate, or whether Marxism is really prevalent in the academy or not, you've gotten into some tiffs with the post-liberals on the right.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you want to talk about that a bit?
yeah. And I think there's some elements of that it overlaps with the Marxist on the left because a lot of the post liberals have a similar anti-capitalist outlook that they start from. And Pat Deneen openly says this. He says that Marx was essentially right. He just had the wrong prescription.
Yeah. There's a podcast called "Why Post-Liberalism Failed,"
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and the name of the podcast is curiously confident. It's already
yeah,
failed, right?
yeah,
And so I kind of give them some kudos for that. Um, but yeah, they seem to. I'd say the post-liberals, they do share with the left this suspicion of people who think seriously about economics. It's like
right,
you're
right.
already oriented around the wrong thing, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and to give them some fair shake here, I remember a survey of libertarians years ago. I don't know if it was staff at libertarian organizations or the students who attended such seminars, like I did. Um, I think it was the latter. Um, and they did come to libertarianism first through an interest in economics. And
Yeah,
so anything involving like natural law or something sort of spun
it
off from
is.
that.
Yeah, right, right. It's
So they might have a point that there's something econocentric or econo-curious that leads people to a philosophical that bridges the is and the ought.
yeah,
So it's value-free economics that ends up spinning off into kind of natural law or Austro-libertarianism, right? So
right, right.
The Austrian part is the value-free economics, and then the Austro-libertarian,
Is the
that's where
yeah.
you bring in the ethics. Even though to me it's somewhat of a non sequitur. Um, what are your thoughts on this, or the kind of? the boundaries between values for
Yeah,
human rights
I mean, a lot of the
and
people in the post-liberal world, they come with no background whatsoever in economics, but they have strong either religious, moral, whatever feelings that lead them
yeah,
to a very distinct conceptualization of what they call the natural law. They also play vagaries with their terminology, so they'll see Aristotle mention the common good, and even though he has a different conception of what the common good means, they have their own idea of the common good. Of the, oh, we're saying that you're using the same term, therefore we're the descendants of Aristotle,
yeah.
and they view the economist as like an aberration that has taken us away from the natural trajectory of human thought. This is Deneen's really big on this. He thinks like the last 300 years are essentially like a missed trajectory of human history, and we need to right the course back to something that predates that.
Yeah, you see, the younger crop of conservatives. Not that he himself is young, but he's sort of
Hmm.
new generation, new right whisperer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, they say going back to the founding. That's for boomer cons. We want to go further back than that. We think the problem is with the Enlightenment itself. It goes back to Locke. The founding fathers were actually wildly off the mark, and they paved the way for wokeism, which is
yeah.
quite the stretch. And one problem with that argument is that, well, if that ultimately paved the way for wokeism, then whatever came before liberalism must have paved the way for liberalism.
Right, right,
What did
right.
the ancient regime do wrong there? Right?
Yeah.
So I haven't really heard a particularly good response to that. Um, they seem to have this kind of chronological causation or blame theory, because 90s Democrats and before them, Reaganite neoliberals came before woke. They must be responsible for woke.
Right, right. It's post hoc ergo propter hoc,
Yeah.
and it's also a very distinct conception as if what came before existed because it was the intended natural order of things with divine revelation or whatever happened to be involved in it. So yeah, there's a determinism in there, and they view like society as having been broken away from that. And you see elements of this. So Deneen, in particular, especially in the mid 2000s, he got really into peak oil theory,
Oh yeah, that kind of
like
surfaced. That sort of
wildly into peak oil theory.
resurfaced more recently. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And
Yeah,
again, that's it's determinism because peak oil theory, like the premise here is you run out of oil, whether you like it or not, nature is going to reassert itself and force you back to the natural course of things. Well, and he's reading that and he's like, oh, well, this also aligns with my moral vision for society. And hence
yeah.
where he ended up.
The post liberals are. Yeah, they're. It's interesting. They want to kind of course correct American society, except that their view has never been the mainstream of
No, it
American
hadn't.
society.
It hadn't.
If you want to go back to the 1850s and when the Know Nothings were pushing back on the Pope worship and Catholicism, and so it's never really been that. It's never been part of our tradition here. So in a strange way, they're revolutionary and utopian and out to lunch,
Yeah.
out to sea, whatever metaphor you want to use, like the left, but instead of going, leaping too far into the present, they sort of misinterpret the past. They at least get parts of the past correct, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
relative to the modern left, they're on firmer ground, and I think
Yeah.
that there are men and women
It's
who are
weird. It's
changing
kind of like
things.
a reactionary socialism of sorts. And this has kind of been buried for the better part of the last century. There hasn't been much of that tradition around. But you go to the 19th century, there are these characters like Thomas Carlyle in the UK who reacts against the French Revolution. He's, correctly that there are problems that come out of that, but he lashes against it as everything that follows from it as if it's like modernity asserting itself to disrupt the natural order of society.
Yeah,
And he
Great
settles to a
Dane.
point.
Yeah,
So that element is certainly resurgent in the post liberal scene of Deneen, and then you get someone like Vermeule, Adrian Vermeule at Harvard, who I think is an even more extreme version of this, and he actually blends his post liberalism with Nazi theory.
oh, like, does he allude to it, or he's very explicit about
He
it?
explicitly, so he's a devoted follower of Carl Schmitt, who's
Oh,
this
okay.
yeah, Nazi legal theorist from the 1920s and 30s,
Yeah,
and
the friend enemy distinction is probably the one big thing that people remember about him.
Hmm.
Um, and I there was an article by Aporia magazine. I think you're familiar with them. They're actually this is sort of an Anglo-American project, and they're sort of you know somewhat HBD, kind of scientifically
Yeah.
grounded. And they they have pushed back on this notion, and a writer over there claiming that it's simply um, it can't really account for the diversity of thought within the right to just
Yeah.
say we need to adhere to friend enemy distinction,
Right. Right.
because, well, first of all, not everyone within the right buys friend enemy distinction, so you're not
That,
going to see
that's
this.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And so there's a question as to at what point does somebody claim now is the time to put up or shut up, right? So you have to be on the side of this particular group of people who are pushing this action, and if not, you're an enemy.
Yeah.
But the real determination of when that is it's always in flux. It's just this
Right.
jumping
Right.
across cutting
It's
conversations.
circular. And this is the problem. And Schmidt himself, he builds an entire elaborate legal theory around this and says that the problem with liberalism is it obscures the friend enemy distinction. And it's precisely that liberalism's successful in doing that that he finds intolerable. And then at the same time, he's like, but the friend enemy distinction cannot be obscured and will reassert itself and therefore be triumphant over liberalism. It's like, well, you've just programmed your own answer into your premises, and it's just round and round in the circle forever that they go.
Yeah,
Um,
I would ask them
and it's
at what
per
point
group.
is the friend enemy distinction instantiated? Like at where
No,
you say liberalism obscures that. Uh, so what spell out explicitly what it's obscuring,
right, right,
It
right.
sounds to me like what he's saying is that too much discussion, clouds the
Yeah.
mind and makes a simple decision more difficult. But
Right, right. Well, welcome to the world, the complexity of the world.
yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I suppose if you want to call it some kind of like, gut instinct berserker vitalist thing, and like I can't even explicate it. It's just that, you
yeah.
know it when you see it. That's probably about as good as it gets, but
Mhm.
that's not going to
That's not a robust basis for an entire philosophical system that he's trying to get
exactly.
out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's actually kind of a childish outlook on the world, and the proof. They always step into these rhetorical games. It's enemies exist. So, well, you've admitted the friend enemy distinction. It's like, no, not really. I've just acknowledged that yes, there are certain categories of behavior, things that I would view as
Yeah.
adversarial.
I
But
mean, yeah, superficially, there's something to be said for the idea that, I believe I might be paraphrasing here, um, either with Schmidt or someone doing something derived from Schmidt, uh, claiming that, if you don't tell me what your worldview is, just tell me who doesn't like you, and I'll tell you what your worldview is, right?
yeah, yeah,
As kind of like a second best hack to figuring out where basically someone is sort of coming from. There's some utility there.
right, right.
But yeah, it becomes it's a lobotomized version of political philosophy, and then
There you go.
and I've noticed that the kind of online right doesn't they think discussing political philosophy is frankly for nerds, and in
Yeah,
fact, their worldview is actually just a constellation of aesthetic preferences.
that's
That's what it's
yes.
emerging to me.
Yes, that they dislike consumerism, they dislike too much choice, they dislike disorder, they dislike
Yeah.
the fact that people have certain lifestyles that are different than their own, and it's like, well, my own preferences should be projected onto the entirety of society, and if it's Patrick Deneen's preferences, then they'll call that the common good. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Most of American society doesn't want to live in a communal religious setting where the church and state are melded together in a variety of ways, and people are
Right.
expected to live their lives and share the exact same preferences as you do. That's just not how human nature plays out, and they rage against the fact that that is, not the realization of the world around them. So
Yeah.
it's
There's a writer named Tanner Greer. A few
Mhm.
years ago, he has a site called Scholar Stage, um, and he writes a lot about like he writes kind of very big think meta geopolitical stuff. China comes up a lot for discussion. Um, he's not doing like in the weeds day to day, Democrat versus Republican stuff. And he said that, American society is basically too libertarian to buy. It's too, too Scots Irish borderers,
Right, right.
too
There's a
unruly,
streak
too
of
unruly to ever buy the Vermeule and
independence there.
Deneen. Yeah. It's just it's so thoroughly libertarian and kind of authority defying Protestant in orientation that this kind of eye of Sauron Catholic thing is just not going to fly.
Right,
Um,
right.
and there's too many Catholics, in fact, who probably are not on board.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. On the post liberals, they present themselves as if they're like the truest representation of Catholic theology, and it seems like the Pope wants nothing to do with them.
Right, right.
And you're not going to win an argument by claiming to be more Catholic than the Pope. And
Yeah,
yet, that's essentially what they're doing. There's statements that have come out of the Vatican through its nuncio to the United States, where these post liberals are like misinterpreting and misapplying theology to instrumentalize the faith as a political doctrine in the world. And this is not what Catholicism is about. They've fundamentally erred, and yet you get all these people like Deneen and Papin and Vermeule that are presenting their ideology as if it's a manifestation of Catholic thought on earth, but the Vatican wants nothing to do with it. So they got a little
yeah.
problem
So is the Vatican a friend or an enemy?
there. Yeah, right,
Right.
right.
Um, yeah, that whole friend enemy distinction thing kind of dovetails into an idea called mistake theory versus conflict theory. And there's a
Yeah, oh
guy,
yeah,
Scott
yeah.
Alexander, has kind of come up in the
Exactly.
last
Yeah,
15 years or so, and he's written in favor of mistake theory, meaning a lot of politics can be reduced to people merely making mistakes, not
yeah,
um, not wanting to kind of lord it over others, whether they like it or not. They genuinely think that what they're advocating is good for everybody, and if only they could, be corrected, disabused of
right.
their incorrectness, then we could
It's
all be
abused.
by
Yeah, yeah.
fine.
That's the
Um, and then there's conflict theory that says no, we actually do have kind of enduring real conflicts wherein somebody has to lose. Um, I guess I veer toward conflict theory only in the sense that mistake theorists are at the very least in conflict with conflict theorists, and so maybe it's a little bit of a cop out, but you know, you're going to have to go out there and convince people, and that creates tension and and discord, and so even the fact of convincing everyone that mistake theory is correct will put you into some kind of conflict. Um, so yeah, but I don't think people day to day are going around with a kind of conflict oriented mindset. And in any case, as far as post liberals go, that doesn't seem to be their bag, as it were. Conflict theory seems to be more of the aesthetic preferring, um, kind of populist right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, because I say what you will about post liberals, but they tend to be a little more thoughtful than just smash your enemies.
Right,
And
right.
so, but you do see a lot of
Well,
lot
there's
of
an entire
anomalies.
doctrine between, and it goes into some very obscure thinkers. And
Yeah,
you can point that out that yeah, they are definitely drawing on a tradition there, and a lot of them are very well read in that tradition. It's just a very eccentric tradition to seize on to as the moment of truth. And that starts with Carl Schmitt, and it goes all the way back to like Joseph de Maistre, Louis de Bonald, these French theorists from the early 1800s that were kind of a reaction against the Jacobins, but really went into this aesthetic direction and a view of society as its purpose is essentially to impose order. And there are reasons why these ideas did not latch on. They tended to be discarded in the century that followed. And it's not because there's like a plot to suppress post liberalism or its precursors. They're actually genuinely bad ideas.
yeah. And there's some weird contradictions in the notion that that a plot to undermine post liberalism could be so successful,
Yeah,
over and over again. If post liberalism is correct, why is it losing?
yeah, exactly. And that's back to that original conundrum in Carl Schmitt. Liberalism is intolerable because it obscures the truth, and it's also like see it sows the seeds of its own demise by obscuring the truth. You're like, okay, well, which one are you picking here?
Yeah.
And he never really has an answer to that in any of his works. He goes round and round about it, and it's clear that he's raging against liberalism, but you know, the answer just is not ever solved by him. It's kind of like his own version of Karl Marx with some of the economic transformation stuff that Marx attempted to do. He never could get to a solution that worked.
Yeah. They're having a focus on economics first. There's some interesting overlaps between the kind of, secular, econocentric libertarians and then materialist Marxists, kind of old school
Yeah,
materialist
yeah,
Marxists. They both don't have much of a tolerance for this notion of the collective spiritual strength being sapped or something. They don't like that kind
right,
of
right.
metaphysical religious sounding language. Um, they are more empirical, at least, I mean, the older scientific, supposedly scientific socialists attempted to be empirical. Um, so I'm noticing now a sort of kindred spirit in the materialist Marxists and the libertarians who, yeah, again, don't seem to have much of
Much else in common. It's
in poem, like
yeah,
they don't like pomo, they don't like religion, so they don't like post-liberalism or pre-liberalism.
yeah,
Of course, they still completely at odds because you have pro-capitalist
yeah.
and anti-capitalist. But I feel like some of the smarter left and right gravitate towards either sort of kind of libertarian classical liberalism or kind of materialist socialism.
Yeah, or orthodox versions of Marxism and the very same stuff that
Yeah,
the academic left will say we're not Marxists because we're not that, even though we share prescriptive ends. It's
yeah. There's some debate as to whether, America's actually better off with the woke than the old school Marxists.
yeah,
Um, I think like Richard Anania said something like that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and because, well, if by that it's meant, the summer of 2020 for eternity, or, cultural revolution and famine, well, I guess I'll take summer 2020 in perpetuity.
Right, right.
Uh, but hopefully that's not what's on offer. Oh, yeah. Um, I mean, I was just going to talk for about a half hour. Just a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Anything you want to get into? I mean, we have the
Ooh.
full hour if you want, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit about the. I think both of these traditions we talked about on the post-liberal right and the Marxist left, and then many off-croppings and offshoots of Marxism that are occurring on the left. One of the arguments I make is it emerges simultaneous to a decline in scholarly standards and rigor. And
yeah,
I say that both in the formal sense and the academic side. It's like if you have an echo chamber of very far left ideas, no one ever scrutinizes those ideas. They just pounce on anything that diverges from them. And you create an epistemic system in which fraud becomes tolerated.
yeah.
And
Well,
you see that
a
all
lot of
over.
what the well, they say there, somewhat jokingly, there, even though it's a fact, there are more Marxists in English departments and economics departments,
That's exactly it.
and so due to that, a lot of what they're doing um, is so-called not even wrong, meaning
Right.
it's not
It can't be
falsifiable.
wrong. It's not
It's actually
falsifiable.
it's hard to accuse it of fraud because
Yeah.
what concrete claim is it making that it can then either show to be true or not? You know?
It's just vacuous prattle in many ways.
Yeah,
And you see this, the students recognize it. They're all fleeing these majors in droves. No one wants to get a critical theory English degree because, well, it's useless on the job market. And the content that they're offering there is just not very intellectual. It's repetitive jargon. So, yeah, people are fleeing majors like that, but they sustain themselves because they're mandatory on the curriculum. You have to take your English class to get a degree. So they're kind of like this relics, but the evidence is that people that take these classes, they don't emerge any better for it. Like no improvement in reading skills, writing skills, critical thinking skills. It's like the blow off class that you just show up, listen to your professor rant about climate change in what's supposed to be a literature class, and then you leave and you forget it. And it's like, well, why are we wasting all this time and effort on this?
Yeah.
It turns out it's a jobs program for activists and humanities
I've
PhDs.
noticed that some of the younger right or the new right are actually making the claim that instead of being upset with the left for existing in this vacuous
Yeah,
circular conversation and pursuing silly non-productive activities, and like the right wishes that they were the ones doing that.
right, right.
Like especially the aforementioned aesthetic first right, who
Yep,
just says forget political philosophy. I like this kind of architecture. I like that kind of woman to marry.
yeah.
I like um so they kind of wish that the right dominated the culture industry
No,
and
right, right.
too
They want
focused
to
on
replace
economics and
the
brass
left.
tacks and not doing the fun stuff, but effect and elite stuff too. Um, so I think a lot of the younger right is motivated by not wanting to be the kind of down to earth and resourceful party or side of
Yeah,
politics, but want to be the fun, aesthetic driven, image based part. And
right,
I could see
right.
the appeal of that.
Yeah. But again, at the end of the day, it comes down, it's a very superficial intellectual basis to build a movement or an idea around.
Yeah, well, I mean, aesthetics wouldn't be. It doesn't put intellectualism first. It's
Right,
associated
right.
with intellectuals because both the very intelligent and the creative kind of lumped in with the elite. Um, So I have some sympathy for that, but to the degree that they let political philosophy be poisoned by that approach
Yeah,
first, that's why I part ways. Um, I think art and political philosophy are quite separate, actually.
yeah.
Um, I'm like I'm a classical libertarian in my political philosophy, but I actually like a lot of kind of silly or left-coded
Oh, sure, sure.
nonsense type
But that's a value of
illustrations and
subjective preference.
yeah. So yeah, one thing I've noticed with people on the left is that they let their politics sort of flow from their aesthetic preferences as if a preference for sub-Saharan African music tradition
Right.
obviously means that a command economy can work. I mean,
Yeah,
they're not keeping these sort of modules separate. They should be considered separately. And a lot of people don't do that. The funnest, coolest, creative people often don't do that. It's just unfortunate.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, all right. Um, yeah. Enjoy Independent Institute.
Absolutely.
Is there a guy named Carl Close still over there?
He is no longer with us, but he was, yeah, for many years way back when.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was sort of my said CO, whatever.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah,
my go-to guy is sort of supervising the. When I was there, Anthony Gregory was the
yeah, yeah.
attorney.
I still talk to Anthony pretty regularly because
Yeah, did he come
he's
through?
over at Hoover right now,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
so he's in the area. Sometimes he comes by and
yeah. He
visits.
went into like stealth mode or something for a while there, like back in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah,
He was like on the
'cause I think he was doing a postdoc,
yeah.
and he was on the East Coast.
He was on like Andrew Napolitano's show
Oh
way
yeah,
back. He
yeah,
was on the news a lot actually.
yeah,
Um, he videos were getting out there in the early days of YouTube, and yeah, I thought he just sort of like decided to no longer pursue this political studies and stuff and just become something of a normie. But he was just kind of dormant and studying for
yeah,
book.
doing his
I,
academic
I
work.
think
So.
Princeton released it or Harvard released it
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something. Yeah. Well, cool. All right, cool. Thanks, Philip.
Works well. All right, we'll
Take
talk to
care.
you soon. Bye.